Hey, bitch! It's time for the book club.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Campfire Gaming Podcast Book Club. It's a book club episode, everybody. So for the month of April, our book club, we were tasked with Chicory, A Colorful Tale. So if you've been with us in the Discord, you know that we've already been talking a lot about it. And we're just going to dive right into it. I'm just going to start off right here and just say, like every book club, we're going to go into a lot of details about the game. So if you have not played Chicory, A Colorful Tale yet and would like to, and you don't want spoilers, then you might want to back out right now because spoilers ahead. So there you have officially been warned. My name is Rich, and I will be your host for this evening's episode. With me today, I've got Matt. Say hi, Matt.
Hey, how we doing? Excited for a book club episode.
Always excited for a book club episode. Especially excited for this book club episode because we have on today our guest, the individual who recommended that we play Chicory, A Colorful Tale, Justin. Welcome, Justin, to the podcast.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now,
Hey,
he is no
we're-
stranger to the Campfire Gaming Podcast, nor is he a stranger to the, Campfire Discord. So we were really pleased to see that we were getting some good recommendations for the book club this month. And we're going to dive into it and see if we hated it, see if we loved it. We're going to have a fun discussion about this game. But before we do that, I will recommend that you, the listener, go to our website, campfiregamingpodcast.com. There you will find links to our social medias, including our Twitter at CampGamePod. And you can also find links to our Discord, which you can come and join us for all these kinds of discussions and recommend your own book clubs. If we select your book club, we're going to probably invite you onto the show so that we can talk with you as well. So I'm just putting that out there. Also, before we dive into Chicory, I will announce that the next book club has already been picked. So for the month of May, we'll be playing Alice Madness Returns. So that'll be for the month of May. We'll be recording this episode at the end of May, and we will be giving all of our discussions there. So thank you to. I'm just going to give credit to Mike for that pick, because that was his pick.
Yep. I took a little while, but I bribed him to come back for an episode, come play a game with us, and of course, he picked an awesome game, Alice Madness Returns. So hopefully everybody joins along and plays the game this May with us.
Yes.
May Madness.
Yes,
Yeah.
May Madness. All right, so let's just dive right into it. Chicory, A Colorful Tale. It's PC, PS4, PS5, all these different platforms. Designed by Greg Lobanov. So that if you have played, I think it was, what is it called? Wander Song. I think that's what his other game was titled. So if you're familiar with that, here's another title from Greg. So $20. So that, I'll just start off right there. The price wasn't bad for this game. There was a lot of content. I don't know what you guys thought.
Yep.
$20 for a game that only came out not even a year ago. It's pretty good deal. And
That's true.
Plus over 10 hours of gameplay, just doing main stuff, obviously a lot more if you do all the side quests and color all the screens, right, Justin?
Yeah, gotta color them all. I think this game even launched at $20. It might have maybe $30, but I think it was mostly $20 ever since I've been following it.
Cool. Oh yeah. So just going into it, why did you pick this game in particular? Have you been following it for a while? Because if I recall, this was a Kickstarter game, and it had a pretty lengthy Kickstarter cycle. So what was your interest in this game?
Yeah, I haven't been following it that long. I didn't know it was a Kickstarter game, but during last year's Game of the Year discussions, I kept hearing Chicory come up through a bunch of different outlets, and they always talked about how good it was, but they couldn't talk about it. That's the type of thing where it really hooks me. It's like, well, why can't you talk about it? How deep is the mechanic or whatever that you're trying to do that's going to give everything away? So that intrigued me. And then, just seeing some of the themes that it dealt with, self-doubt and depression and anxieties and imposter syndrome. Like, I was like, oh man, I gotta play this. So
Yeah, it is definitely a very emotional game. And like Matt already said, right? Like it's about 8 to 10 hours ish if you're just like kind of mainlining through the regular story. Sorry, Matt, like I beat it in under 8 hours, so I'm just saying
You
I beat
did?
it faster. Yeah, I beat it.
Yeah,
in
but did you
How?
collect? But
It
did you
was at
collect all the
7.
gifts and trash?
Oh hell no, I
How?
didn't. I did not. I did not collect
He
absolutely
didn't.
every.
You
I didn't
didn't even.
100% the game.
Did you talk to like every villager? There's like a million of them.
No, there is a million of them. That's why I didn't talk to all of them. I would say this though: don't play this game on an empty stomach, because everything is related to food in this game. Like
Yes.
the naming, I thought that was actually pretty cute. By the way,
Yeah.
like I
Yep.
actually really, I thought that was really fun. So yeah, like you start out, you're basically living in the world of Picnic, or it's the Picnic Province, is what it's called,
Correct.
and you play as Chicory. You play as Chicory, no,
Nope.
I'm sorry. You play as whoever you decide to name your character as.
What was
You
your?
get asked,
What's your favorite food?
yeah, you get asked what's your favorite food, and that is your name for the rest of the game. What I meant to say is you're Chicory's janitor. That's who your
Yes.
character is. And that's how you end up, basically that's the essentially the inciting incident is that you see Chicory, who is, they kind of build up this lore around being the brush wielder, like you're the person in charge of, something. I didn't really get too deep into the lore of it. But it's a long line of people who are brush wielders, and Chicory leaves their brush sitting out there, and then you, the janitor, just kind of pick up and find it, and you're like, oh well, there's no color, I gotta go do the thing, and that's when your adventure kind of just kicks off.
So what is everybody's favorite food?
My name was Burrito,
That would have been good.
and it was it was pretty solid.
I went for pizza, and in searching online, it seems like that is the most common food that people use.
I was pizza as well. I was hungry for pizza at the time, so I put pizza in. I had a lot of pizza on my mind. It was funny because I was reading one of the synopsis here, and I was like, "Why they keep referring to my character? Oh, they must have picked pizza too."
Yep.
Yeah. So 2 pizzas and a burrito. Okay.
2 pizzas and a burrito.
Nice.
That's what we're gonna title this episode.
There
I'm
you
just
go.
kidding. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so you end up going through a series of chapters. And so this game is basically an adventure. It's an adventure game. You play through a series of chapters. It's very narrative heavy. And it's kind of like a nice start to finish with a lot of collectibles. There's a lot of
Mhm.
collectibles in this game that you can go and get, whether it be like, clothing, furniture, items, all that sort of stuff.
The only real combat in this game are the boss fights.
Yeah.
Everything in between, it's all puzzle.
Yep, it's all puzzles, navigation. It's I should say it's like a 2D sort of top-downy sort of game. It looks like a side scroller, but you basically play on a full 2D axis where you're walking around different screens, kind of like a Legend of Zelda game,
Mhm.
like an old Legend of Zelda game, I should say. I should be spelling.
Yeah.
We should.
I recently just finished Link's Awakening. I was like, this is kind of the same thing, except from coloring everything with a brush.
And I could see if they probably, I could see that they might have borrowed some elements of the Legend of Zelda in this game. You can see just how you navigate through the world and how they kind of set up like these sort of, I'm not going to say dungeons, but like they set up like these various areas of the world that you have to solve a lot of puzzles. There's a lot of puzzle solving in this game.
Yeah,
Granted, I'll say like the puzzles aren't super difficult. Like the game is not a difficult game, and I think that's largely on purpose because I think what the game is more so trying to do is tell the story rather than challenge the player. Like they'll throw some obstacles in your way to make this game not boring, but
yeah, I didn't find it too challenging at all, but I wouldn't say that was a bad thing, right? To me,
Right.
the entire experience was like everything was just enough, and it was fun. There was nothing. There was challenge, and there's a lot of stuff to do, but never did I feel overwhelmed, except for maybe I did not color every screen in Picnic Province, but that I think could have been overwhelming. But like at the end of it, I felt like I really got more than my $20 worth out of this game because of just how much fun. It never once was. Well, there was one time it was frustrating, but we can talk about that later. But it's I was thinking about this as I was kind of doing some side quests after I beat the game. Is I never once got frustrated with this. I never got stuck. There was a couple puzzles here and there where like it took a few tries, but it was never a frustrating amount. It never felt like like I couldn't do anything in this game, what's the joke we like to say is like I never had to go find like a Prima guide, right?
You didn't
you
call
know,
up your homie Prima to get the
nope.
scoop?
And let's be real. If I was going to get a tip, it would have been from Dad, right? Because remember, if you ever stuck, I'm going to throw this out here. I'm actually a little disappointed. I beat the game without talking to your dad or my dad in the game, right?
Same.
So the way they give the tips in this, I thought was interesting, is they have phone booths hidden, just littered around the world in areas where you're probably about to go on some sort of mission or some puzzles or something like that. So if you get stuck, you go and you call mom, right? And you're talking to mom, and she kind of gives you a light hint, like, oh, you should maybe go to, what is it, the Supper Woods or something to find blackberry, and that's in the southeast or something like that, right? And what's funny is, kind of typical, I had to think because I had experience like this when I was talking to my dad recently, so roles reversed. But all of a sudden, like when mom's done kind of giving you the little light tips, she's like, oh, hold on, dad has something to say, do you want to talk to dad? And again, I never actually talked to dad, but I can only assume that it would actually be more direct hints like, hey, go, like, I don't know if it was like go 5 screens over and then down 2, or here's whatever, here's how you solve this or do that. But yeah, I thought it was a really interesting way to kind of help players that might be stuck. So
yeah, Dad was really interesting. I didn't use him for the main story path, but definitely while I was finishing up a handful of the collectibles, he came in handy. So once you're done with the story, you can go back and mom will be like, oh yeah, you're in that area, you should look for a piece of trash. And then if you go to dad would be like, yeah, go up and look for like a really narrow path, so you'd know like to what you're looking for at least.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And there's a couple of characters that they have in the game that will I think give you hints to gather some of the collectibles. I know that there was one, I think his name was Spinach.
Yep.
Yeah, Spinach will give you hints at which screen or what town has the most litter in it or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah,
so you have
right. So you have to collect a bunch of items, one of them being litter. You have to collect litter on the ground, and then you can use it to actually exchange it for it's used as a currency that you can use to exchange it for like things like furniture, clothing, more of those collectibles.
Plants, hair.
Plants.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decoratives.
Free.
Yeah. Yes. So moving into, I mean, some of the gameplay tips are pretty nice. Granted, like we said, it's not the most challenging game, and I think I can't, at least for me, I don't know if that is like a plus or a minus. I actually had a lot of fun playing this game, even though it wasn't super challenging. It was pretty nice to be able to just kind of, you just kind of hang out for a little while. They don't stress the brain too hard, but they do make it so that you have to think maybe just a little bit. And I don't know if you guys do this, but like I noticed that, okay, so just to clarify, I played this on PC. So I went and bought this on Steam. What I did though is like I found myself I noticed that I had when I was thinking about a puzzle, like when I was just kind of like sitting there, kind of observing the puzzle, thinking, I would sit and I would use my mouse to just basically sit there and paint the screen while I was thinking about stuff. It was almost like not like a tick, but I was just like sitting there thinking and just like drawing stuff on the screen. I love that mechanic, by the way. Like being able to paint the entire world is super, super cool.
Yeah. The puzzles that got me the most, and I think it had to do with like I wanted to color all the screens immediately when I got in. Is I would there's 2 mechanics for the puzzles, and they both are mushrooms, I believe. And there's one that will bounce you if it's colored, and there's one that will shrink if it's colored.
Yep.
And I would like paint the whole screen, and then I'd like forget which mushroom type is on the screen, and then I'm like trying to solve the puzzle like in my head, but I'm thinking about the wrong mushroom, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this, that, and that, and I was like, then I start the puzzle, and then it doesn't bounce me over, and I'm like, I have to reapproach this.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, the idea here you were talking with the start of the game. The idea is like you're cleaning a room, and something happens, and the whole world loses color. Which again, to kind of the main mechanic is you can color everything in the world. What I thought was just I mean, how as you added color to things, it added function to a lot. I mean, it's right. You couldn't swim in water until you were able to color it, right, and then you could jump in. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, anytime you colored water before you had the ability to
It would wash away.
swim, it would wash away. Same thing with kind of some walls or your mushrooms or what was it the like up there in what was it, the paths up to 11Z's, right? The gas bubbles and things like that. So
Yep.
the vines, right? It was just a really cool of the clouds later on in the up in the peaks and stuff like that, right? It was just kind of cool how you added color to the world, added functionality and a lot of the gameplay mechanics, right? So it's really neat.
And
I'm gonna.
that was,
go ahead.
That was, I mean, so we started talking about it briefly, but that's part of the story too. Is part of the wielder's responsibility is that over time color fades.
Yep.
And you get into what that means in the game, and it's sometimes passion fades, sometimes enthusiasm fades, and you need to find something new to light that. So
that was usually kind of the passing of the brush to the next wielder, right?
Yep.
And kind of the not crazy lore, right? I didn't watch some 3-hour lore video, but the little bit of lore in the game is that there is some which ends up getting kind of becomes in my case pizza's responsibility is there's this corruption that's slowly seeping this kind of color out of the world, right? That's why you have these wielders, and there's this constant battle between the wielder and this corruption. And now when you become the wielder, the whole world starts one loses all its colors, and then the corruption really starts taking over in places, and that's kind of where your journey as pizza begins is to well, you're the wielder now. It's your responsibility. You need to make sure picnic is well. Go ahead, Justin.
So I didn't get the feeling that Chicory, and they talk about this a ton in the story, is like Chicory doesn't give you the brush. You find the brush laying on the floor, abandoned. You ask her, say, "Hey, I have your brush. Do you want it?" And she just sort of doesn't respond, and she's like, "Just get out of here." And
I just took it. I didn't ask her. Blackberry got mad with me for not asking Chicory first.
Yeah. So moving the story along, so Blackberry was Chicory's mentor before Chicory got the brush. And you get to meet, was it 2 other previous wielders? Or is it just the
Cardamom?
other one?
I think it was Blackberry and Cardamom. Is I'm saying that
okay.
Right?
Yep. Cardamom. Yeah. So it's just you get to meet these other previous wielders, and you find out that the corruption is something that they've had to deal with as well. We'll get into why and as we go on.
Right. And so, I mean, that's basically how the game kind of moves you through it, is that you're going to these various places around the picnic province, and you're basically trying to clean up the corruption. And one of the things that, that you, Pizza, whoever you named your character as, notices is that every time that you essentially defeat a boss, nothing really changes. That's a pretty key plot point, is that like you defeat the corruption, you get a new ability, is how the game will usually handle that, is that you get a new ability every time you beat a boss. And then nothing really changes. Like the dark trees don't go away or anything like that. The big tree that you entered to go into the boss room, it's just there.
The door closes. Right. And actually to your point too is not there actually is a little bit more that happens than you getting an ability. Corruption appears to actually be spreading more, right?
Right.
They start showing up a lot more places. Which was it when you're talking to the Bug Queen, is that when the first person that really kind of called that out? I'm trying to remember. There was a character that really
Yeah.
called that out.
Yeah.
Is like that what we're bringing up now is, hey, even though you're defeating it, it's actually getting worse.
Yeah, it didn't do nothing. Yeah. And this is a big tie-in to this ends up leading into a big tie-in with the game's theming. And as you interact with Chicory, Blackberry, and a bunch of other characters, you get a lot of these themes of like what Justin said at the beginning, is that you get this imposter syndrome. You have your character who is very like, I'm not good enough for this sort of thing. I don't know if I should be carrying this brush. You talk to Chicory a whole bunch, and she's very depressed. She's not interested in being the brush wielder anymore, and that's why she just kind of tosses the brush aside. She kind of gets fed up with the whole thing and just says, I'm done with this. And which later down the line you kind of find out that the corruption ties directly into those negative emotions. I don't know what you guys kind of like. It seems, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Is that like the whole idea of the corruption is that all these negative emotions are being fed off of to grow all of this corruption across the Picnic province, and it's gotten so bad to the point where it sucked away all of the color.
Yeah, and they really start to lean into this in the boss fights. It doesn't become super apparent the first time it happens. So in the first boss fight, you're just fighting, if I remember correctly, it's just an eyeball or
Yep.
multiple eyeballs. And that's sort of the idea. Your character is just being watched. Everything she's doing as the new wielder, people are so incredibly critical of, and it's her fighting that. Moving on
really, so real quick to drive that home too is, I know Rich, you didn't talk to them all, but as you talk to a lot of the villagers, they really kind of it really kind of portrays that there's a lot of weight being put on Pizza, this new wielder. There's a lot of responsibility having that brush. She's responsible to make sure everything's colorful, and you get the critics, like, what was his literally the fox dude right next door to the wielder. He was like,
I was gonna say like the lizard Lemon. That's like, that was one of the first people that I talked to that I was just like, what an asshole.
Yeah. But
you go up to her and you ask, like, she's just like, yeah, could you paint my house for me? I would really like some color in my house. And you're like, okay, fine, I'll just paint your house. Well, could you use a couple of different colors? Yeah, I could do that. All right, actually, could you just erase some of that? I don't want all of that. And then eventually she's just like, well, okay, but Chicory would have done it better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you asshole. I'm like, all right, fine. You can paint your own house.
Yeah, that was a lot of the villagers, though, is not always negative, but more in, this is your responsibility here because you're the wielder and you really need to take care of this,
Right.
So sorry to interrupt, Dustin.
No, yeah. And I mean, no, to what Rich was saying, these villagers have demands, and I mean, my background, my degree is in art, and this sort of hit home a whole lot of, your clients are demanding. It's not always what you want, and it might not always be the best, but they're the ones that are putting in the request. And then, we've talked about mom and dad, but Pizza has a sister. So Pizza's sister is in an art school within the game for bringing up the next wielder. I thought you were going to be in conflict with her, but she was so incredibly
She was
caring.
One of the most supportive people, I think, in the game.
Yes.
She was always kind of there for you. Especially, I really saw that in, what was it, Dinners to Town, when she took you out to...
Out for pizza?
I thought it was ironic. Out for pizza. That's why I picked it. She gave you, like 4 options? I was like, my name's Pizza. Let's go get some pizza or slice or whatever they call it, right? but in that whole time, the whole game, but really in that moment, she's, you're tired, like you can take a break, you kind of can say no and stuff like that, right? But you know, Pizza, wants to help the wielder and wants to take on this responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I mean, your character does. eh, Going along with that whole art school thing too is that like you have people that do kind of call you out as a fraud too.
Yep.
They I think one of the characters in that art school was just like, that's it, like that's all that you got, kind of a thing.
Yep.
And the entire time your character is feeling that sort of sense of imposter syndrome, that they've kind of just fell into this whole role as the brush wielder, and now they got all this responsibility dumped on top of them, and they feel like they're you feel like you're not ready for it. At it,
You
reasonably so.
impact, yeah, I mean, not just the people asking for color or having new signs built throughout the game, as jobs as the wielder, but the person you alluded to, their name was Radish, and Radish, it was like the top of the art school, getting ready to become the next wielder. And then if you go through the art classes and try to replicate a bunch of these classic paintings, she quits. She quits art school
Hmm.
because of you. Um, and it was really I felt bad for her. I felt bad for Pizza. I felt bad for Radish, and you know,
But you
Right.
you helped her out, right?
I did finish the quest. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I
I mean,
did
this
like.
is like the thing that I do like about this game and its storytelling is that it really does just peel back into a lot of layers. Like this rabbit hole, no pun intended, goes really really deep. Because like yeah, like going into that too, like the reason that Radish ends up being so resentful is that you just kind of fell into this. You
Hmm.
didn't sit and go into all this work and put in all the time and effort, which gets alluded to even more when you talk with Chicory towards the end of the game, where she explains how much work she put into everything to try and get to being of status of being the wielder, and then Blackberry wanting to take it away last minute because they weren't confident in her ability. Or
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This says a lot about. I mean, as a content creator of any kind, I think you can put a lot of these themes to it, not just painting and traditional artistry, but even as like podcast hosts, you guys have um, people that come and listen. They have expectations, they have requests, and that's it's the same stuff. Chicory comes through.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think this is just art related. Again, to your point, it's any sort of creative, whatever it may
Hmm.
be.
I mean, and funny enough, we ran into a lot of these other themes when we played. What was it? 2 months ago when we did the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide,
Mm.
specifically with the Beginner's Guide, when we were running into a lot of these themes of like the expressing artist as well. And I
Hmm.
thought, honestly, I kind of thought that ultimately is where a lot of like the corruption and the darkness was going to go, is that is becoming an expression of them as an artist as well. Like you can't really have everything be sunshine and rainbows and colorful all the time. Sometimes you need to kind of tap into that sort of corruption and that darkness, and realizing like um that you are kind of a flawed person, and that you can use that to express something.
Yep.
So I was a little disappointed in that regard, in that like I guess I was kind of disappointed, because coming from something like the Beginner's Guide, where something that was taken as very dark and grim was really more just an expression of how the artist feels about their work. In contrast to this, it I didn't like the fact that they used the darkness and all that as sort of like the main antagonist to the entire world, and that this is something that needs to be snuffed out. You know what I mean? Like you have to destroy it, you have to get rid of it. It's purely evil. It has to be gotten rid of rather than dealt with in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I mean, continuing on with the darkness, you find out that this Chicory is not the first one this has happened to.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Blackberry had to fight her own darkness also, and so did Cardamon. And it is one of the things that, when it gets to a point, it's the reason they hand it on.
Right. Which is weird that like towards the end of the game they kind of contradict that by going through this whole notion of like Chicory wanting to just break the brush, right? Chicory wants to destroy it, wants to abandon the legacy of passing down the torch and things like that, when really it was more like the way that they kind of set this up is that it was more or less like a when you passed the torch, it was a lot of like teaching moments, both interpersonal and like, as sort of a responsibilities sort of a thing. So it was weird that they would kind of shovel that aside as like, oh, you got to abandon the legacy of all of these other brush wielders because the wisdom is, the wisdom is not important. It's about how we want to do things, kind of a thing.
I disagreed with Chicory. I said we shouldn't break the brush.
I did, yeah, that's what I did too. Because that's what I was thinking about. Like when that whole segment was playing out, when you have to go up to the tower to defeat the last boss, and Chicory was saying we should break the brush. Well, I'm thinking back to the beginner's guide. I'm like, well, you gotta have some darkness. Like you can't just have everything be great and great and wonderful, because you got to contrast it. You need contrast.
Yeah.
What's good without a little bit of bad to make the good seem good. And so I was like, okay, like tap into my inner Bob Ross, where he's just like, you got to have the darks with the lights. You got to have that. And so I was like, no, you can't. I don't want you to break the brush. And then the brush ends up getting kind of destroyed anyway. So
yeah, I was the same way. I was firmly against destroying the brush, but it all works out.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I mean, do you guys want to get into the story anymore? The story, I think we've talked about it indirectly by just the strength of the themes. It hits these themes really well until the end, like you said, where Chicory sort of gives you that choice. But I think I'd be interested to see if anyone actually wants to break the brush with the way that it's built up.
It'd be cool if there was like some data, like like some games do, like, oh, so many people chose to do this,
Yeah,
yeah.
like the Mass Effect infographic. How many people broke the brush?
Yeah,
I was thinking like the Telltale, after each
sure.
chapter, it'd be like everybody chose to side with so and so.
Yeah, now I'm kind of interested. Like, does that change anything? Because that's kind of a key point right there. Is that if you don't break the brush, then the brush essentially turns into the last boss.
Yep,
and you have to fight it. So if you break it, do you have to fight it?
It's a good question. I don't know. None of us. Yeah, none of us.
Yeah, none of us actually broke the brush. So yeah, we don't really know. But now I gotta find this out.
We come to find out, after the brush is taken from you and broken, that the power was in you the whole time.
Yeah.
Pizza is able to make her own brush just by remembering all the good times and the feelings she had while she was painting. She was able to grow a new brush. And this sort of blows Chicory's mind. Like, Chicory's like, this is not right. Like, how the heck did you do this?
Yep.
And then you
kind of blew everybody's mind as you're, afterwards as you walk around and chat with people. So.
Yeah. So you end up getting a new brush to fight the last boss, and then I liked how midway through the fight too, Chicory comes in to help you as well. You get some backup because Chicory's like, yeah, I saw that, and I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. So you know what I did? I just decided to do it. I didn't even know I could have that power. Apparently everybody can have that. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, and I know we haven't talked about the boss fights a whole lot, but you basically just paint the bad guy when they're vulnerable. I found most of the boss fights fairly simple until the last one, and things get chaotic, especially once Chicory jumps in and you're getting extra colors and the boss is painting and you painting. I was like, it was the first time where the game was like, I would get hit twice and the game's like, do you want to take a break? And I think that's sort of like, and I was like, no, I'm good. And it just jumps you right back in. So there's no like consequences in dying or anything. But I thought that was sort of an interesting take, or it's like, you're an artist, and as long as you're trying, you can't fail. It sort of had this interesting take for me.
Right. You
Yeah.
don't even really have like a health resource or anything like that. The most that you get is that like Chicory or not Chicory, Pizza's facial expression sort of changes after she gets hit.
Yeah.
And so she'll have like that, like a, like a pained look on her face when you're about to, I guess, quote, die.
Yeah.
And then,
And then
once you
she,
die, you just kind of get plopped back into the same spot, which is
but
another
in,
reason why, like, I think, at least for me, the game went really fast because, like, even if you die, you just kind of just start in the same spot. And you just kill the boss anyway.
yeah. In the last battle, though, it was if you kind of got downed in the last battle, Chicory actually came and helped you, and
Yeah, she
vice
picked you
versa.
up.
Because then there was times that she'd get grabbed by the brush, and you'd help her out. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, to your point, like I wouldn't say any of the boss battles. Again, it was one of those like it was challenging but never difficult. Um, for me, it was just kind of constantly keep moving. I played on the Switch, so my other finger was on the screen coloring at all times. Um, but yeah, no, it was the last one was definitely chaotic because as typical boss battles, they kind of added all the different mechanics. So
Mm-hmm.
trying to constantly, you know, get out of the way of the brushes or the weird little designs that you had to kind of stand in the middle of, and yeah,
Yep.
But I will agree with Justin though, is that like some of the boss fights, it did get really bad where it was like you just had I'm trying to find a good way to like a good word for it. But like when we would play World of Warcraft or something like that, we would just call it like particle effect puke, where it was just
yeah,
like there was just effects all over your screen and you just
Yeah.
can't see anything. That happened, in a couple of the boss fights where like especially ones where you're fighting mirrored pizza where you have the two strokes of brushes and you're just
That
trying to
one.
wiggle stuff across the screen and
hmm
That
Yeah.
one I was surprised I didn't die in, but it did seem like it took me forever, just like trying to, because it would switch between like your brush or the mirrored brush, between which one
yep.
would actively hit them. So I'd be like
Yep.
trying to swipe them, and I'm like, oh crap, move it over here and try to swipe them, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk through the boss battles, because it sort of comes through in the end, and I think it kind of has to do with the story a bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So the first boss, as I said earlier, was the eyeballs.
Yep.
The second boss was Chicory,
Yeah.
which was really quite surprising. And as we've touched on with the darkness and what it represents, when you go into the boss fights, it's your thoughts of Chicory and how she feels about you.
hmm
And then it's also a bit of Chicory herself in there as a previous wielder, and all of her doubts about you, and you're trying to fight those. The second boss, or the third boss, is Blackberry, right? Yes.
I think it was
Um,
Chicory. It was
Oh,
your or
it
not
was
Chicory.
pizza.
It was yourself.
It was pizza.
I'm doing the same
Yes.
thing, Rich. Calling
Right.
myself Chicory. Yep, as pizza.
Yep.
Blackberry was one of the wielder trials.
Okay. Yeah. So you fight yourself and all of your doubts, and then you fight Blackberry and all of her regrets of how she treated Chicory and how she feels about Chicory's decisions since being a wielder, and especially how it revolves around the main character.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of that comes to a head with the final boss battle, where you're fighting all four of those different variations at the same time. So
Yeah.
a little chaotic there at the end.
Well, that was kind of like you work through because you go fight the final boss the first time, and it's to yourself and you lose, right? And then
Yep.
you lose your brush, and then you walk around picnic and everybody's depressed and everything's a little bit more gray, everything's a little bit more washed out.
And you walk slower too.
You walk slower because you're sad, and and then the whole you grow your brush and you go back in. And I don't remember. I don't think you fought yourself then. It was just Chicory, Blackberry, and then the brush, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep. It was the brush itself. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, not a whole lot of boss fights. Like, yeah, the game itself is not terribly long, but like from the content that you guys were, the amount of content from what you guys were describing, it's enormous. There's so much. There's so many NPCs to talk to. There's lots of stuff to go and collect around the world. Um, But one thing I really did want to get into aside from the bosses, I mean, is there anything else that we need to cover with the bosses?
I don't think so.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, all the boss battles kind of tie into the narrative of like, you're
yeah.
kind of battling yourself and your doubts and all and that sort
Hmm.
of thing. Um, but one thing I really did want to give this game credit to is just how tight of game design it has. And I think it's so I gotta give credit to the designers for this with how much they were able to utilize just merely being able to paint on the screen. That mechanic is used in so many places to do so many things throughout the game. It was honestly impressive between, yeah, like very creative uses of like pushing around a big ball and then filling it with paint to blow up rocks, or moving plants around, or being able to swim. Like the amount of mechanics that they add in this game to just navigate the world was just wonderful. And so I really got to give it credit for that, because it made the game a lot of fun centered around pretty much just me wiggling my mouse around. Like
Yeah.
I gotta admit though, like that was a hell of a good way to paint the screen. Like all I gotta do is just wiggle my mouse back and forth across the screen with the biggest brush setting, and then boom, whole screen's painted. It
Yeah,
was easy.
that came in so handy. In I use that in the caverns. Anytime you went to a cavern, I just biggest brush, just again use the switch. So my fingers fat fingered everything just across the screen, colored everything in, and yeah,
Intentionally fat fingered.
yes, on purpose. Although the unintentional came in, and I'll share these on social media sometime. Either when this episode drops or shortly after. Um, some of my art didn't look the greatest. I guess this is kind of getting into more technical side things. I personally didn't think the joystick of the Switch was the greatest and most accurate. There was a lot of like, I tried a little subtle detail and wanted to maybe move a little faster, a little slower. Again, I probably should have hopped in. I think there's a ton of different settings. But anyways, it was a Switch, so I was like, I'm just going to use my finger and the touch screen. It makes sense. But again, you lose a lot of control and accuracy that way. So.
I'm interested to see, like, so as again, like the themes in this are just so strong. As Pizza continues to grow in her responsibilities and her abilities as the wielder, you as the player learn new ways to do things as well.
Mhm.
Be it your special abilities or whatnot. But for me, I noticed the way I painted the screen continuously evolved, even up through the end. So listening to you guys, how you just like, went back and forth, like I was a big user of the hold the button down and it would
Yep.
fill the area.
Sure.
I
If I
did
was
that.
coloring,
I
go
did
ahead.
that for, once I figured out how to do it, that was like my go-to. So I would fill the screen with like the sort of off color for like the tree trunks, because I found those really difficult to paint. And then I would do it again with the grass color, and anything that's already painted wouldn't be colored again. So then I would just go through and just do the small little dots. And then as
Yep.
you get paintbrushes later on that have different styles and effects, you got the paint bucket tool, which is uh, hit or miss depending how it's used. But yeah, like that sped up my painting, because I like we said at the start, I painted every screen, every bit I could. And
Which
that
props to you, man. it's
Yeah, good for
amazing.
you.
I think that paid off for me in the end. Like once you start getting the swim ability, you can swim
Yeah.
through anything
And
that's painted, right?
I
So
did.
like,
Yeah, when I started, I went back and I started collecting the trash after I beat the game. The ones I missed. I colored everything from what the closest bench to, was it spinach? I think it was spinach was spinach was the litter person. And yeah, it was just like land on that bench, swim right up to him, figure out, hey, what's the next area that I kind of missed some trash in, and then swim right back to the bench. And but to your point, like I at there the end game or whatever, the after game, whatever we want to call it, everything after you beat the game, I was going, damn, I should have painted everything, because I could just swim everywhere, make it much faster. But since I didn't paint every screen, I couldn't.
yeah, that so for me, because I painted every screen, and I don't know, like I even went back and repainted screens because I my style progressed so much from, even from the beginning of the game to like a quarter of the way through the game. I would see the screens that I went back to Picnic. No. Yeah, Picnic. I'd go back there and I'd be like, no, this doesn't work anymore. So I'd repaint everything. And then by the end of the game, I was like repainting most of the screens I was going back through, even though I didn't need to. But that's probably why I had the 21-hour run time to the end.
Right.
And to your point
yeah.
of kind of getting better and better tools as you go, one thing that crossed my mind when I came across him was Dr. Cheese, right? He gives you the ability to
Oh,
kind of
sure.
set your own color palette.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, maybe I go back and I should, then I could, my problem is like, I'm like, so like, oh, I want all the grass everywhere to look the same. But as you kind of go through the different areas of Picnic, you get different by default for kind of different colors in a lot of the different areas. So you might not always have green to color, the grass green, or even down in the big sip and the water area. When you zoom out and you look at the map, I have like 3 different blues down there because those different areas, there's dark blue, then there was kind of a teal I could use in some areas.
Yeah.
But again, the point there is for someone like you or people who really enjoy the coloring aspect of this game, there's a lot of options via the brush styles, via things like Dr. Cheese, and being able to create your own color palettes if you did want to go back and get really like, hey, I want all the trees to be this specific brown. And if you get even crazier, I imagine maybe with the mouse or something where you can get a little bit more detail, you could start adding like layers and, getting really into it. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was awesome with the amount of ways you could color everything.
Yeah. And this works really, really well for the art style that
Mm-hmm.
they used for Chicory, where everything is very like cartoonish, looks like a coloring book. It's like a coloring book and, kind of like a comic book in some cases. Like it's not a whole lot of like textures to a lot of things. A lot of things are truly looking like a blank canvas, and you just need to fill in the lines for a lot of these places. And I think it looks really, really nice when you do get to I saw one of your, one of the screenshots, Justin, that you posted was where you were sitting in that little fire with the little cave or whatever. That looks so nice. Like that looks really, really nice, even with
Mm-hmm.
the limited amount of colors that you can use in a particular area.
Yeah, that one. So like what Matt was saying, there are a couple colors where I'm like, I just always want to have these. So yeah, using Dr. Cheese in the lab, I had like 2 different browns that I just wanted to always have, and that ended up working for that shot.
Mm-hmm. I really this is kind of an after the game thing, and kind of just a little fun thing they added was, and unfortunately, Rich, yours didn't work when you shared on Discord here,
I
but
know, I was
the
bummed.
time lapse. I really want to see Justin's time lapse if he's able to get
Yes.
that as like a GIF or a video or something for us. Heck, even just a screenshot of your you pull up your phone that has the map on it would be
I'm
sick,
on
just to kind of see how you colored everything.
I'm on PS5, so I can do a screen capture of the time lapse. I can get that out.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, because that's what I was trying to post in the book club channel on our
Okay.
Discord. Is like I wanted to see if I could like make somebody like cringe super hard because my map is an absolute dumpster fire. Like there's just splotches of different colors just all over the place, and nothing works. And there's just like missing pieces in some areas where you'd be like, why didn't you just color over there? Like you just
Yeah.
could have done that.
About the map is super simple but amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of the game, before you have a lot of the abilities, you still have the ability to paint on pretty much anything. So you can, like, if you find a piece of trash that you can't get to yet, you can circle it. And because the map, when you look at it, shows things as you have them painted, you'll see like big circles on your map of being like, oh, I have to go back there. I thought it was super cool. It's like, I mean, it's like putting a pin or a checkpoint or
Yep.
something on an Assassin's Creed or a Breath of the Wild or whatever. But you got to paint it on there. It was cool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool too, kind of again, after going back and kind of doing some of the side missions, is also kind of maybe remembering, or because there's a vine or a wall you can swim up or something. since you colored that before to go do something, maybe a mission or whatever, right? It was like, oh yeah, I can go up this way. It was just kind of a reminder of you colored in all the different paths, or kind of left little, in a way, maybe not on purpose, but since you were there, you could follow your tracks. Essentially, you left a bunch of tracks and you could retrace if you needed, which came in helpful once or twice when I was tracing down some trash and some gifts. I was like, what's another? Oh wait, this screen has a whole bunch of color on it. Let's go. Oh okay, yep, I can go up here and then cut over 2 screens, and now I can get my treasure or trash or whatever.
I will admit, I got a little like I kind of like rolled my eyes a little bit at some of the when you get the swim ability, and I started swimming around everywhere. I'm just like, wow, they took this like directly from Splatoon. I'm just like, this is exactly what you do in Splatoon.
You jump right into that paint.
Yep.
Yep.
You just swim around in the paint like that. So one of the things I also really wanted to talk about with this game, and I think this is probably the biggest sell of this game, in my opinion, is the soundtrack is phenomenal. Absolutely, like this is probably one of my favorite video game soundtracks to date now, just because I love how everything just feels so cohesive with that art style, and just how comfy the entire game feels. I was like no joke, I was sitting, we were my wife and I were like just playing Apex not too long ago, and I got up to go to the bathroom, and as I'm like walking over to the bathroom, I'm like whistling part of the tune from Chicory. I'm just like do 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 do. I'm just like, oh god, this is living inside my head rent free, man. Like this soundtrack is too good.
Yeah.
So Lena Raine did the soundtrack for this game, and yeah, she just did just an absolute banger of a soundtrack.
Sorry.
Any thoughts, Matt, on the soundtrack? Did you like it?
I thought Justin had some, so I was waiting. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't think any of us have made this comparison yet, and we aren't quite into the review section yet. But like, this kind of was a surprise, very similar to how I was surprised with how much I liked Undertale last year. I think that was like May or June's game last year, of like just blew me away with just some of the story, the characters, the gameplay, and the soundtrack. And same with you. It's just I've on and off the last month kind of pulled up Spotify while I'm working. I throw on Chicory's soundtrack, and it's just a good chill soundtrack. But like, yeah, and it really kind of helps add to, especially in the more kind of emotional or parts of the game, kind of add to it, and really kind of make you feel the moments that are happening. So or just kind of the gloomy nature of was it Apple Foothills, or something, or the rainy forest of I have a list here somewhere. What's the banquet rainforest, things like that. So
well, especially the cave, the song that you get when you go run through the caves, like that's sort of like dark and mysterious, like not really like dark as in like an evil sort of way, but just sort of dark as in like more so a mysterious sort of darkness being in that cave. And it sells the environment so well, even for you have a colorless, you have a cave with no color or not like hardly any like things to look at, but like that soundtrack just sells the mood so well. And on top of that, just the music that you get with those boss fights that we had already talked about is just so good. It all comes together in such a nice little package that like I need to get this soundtrack. I love it so much.
On vinyl.
On vinyl.
I bet it's on, was it I Am 8-Bit? I bet they have it.
I'll have to look. If they really have a vinyl version, I might have to pick it up.
Yeah, so Lena, they also did the soundtrack for Celeste.
Okay.
And Celeste has...
And Deltarune, too.
Yeah, and Celeste,
and Guild Wars.
I think, might even have a more banging soundtrack than this.
Nice.
It's another game that has deep themes of dealing with depression. And it symbolizes that through climbing a mountain. It's another really touching game that I'm super glad that they worked on, because they bring everything in these types of really heavy themed games.
Sounds like a future book club game.
Probably.
It's it's sort of a Meat Boy-esque, like throw your head at it until you get through the level type thing.
Oh, okay.
It's not as easy as this game was.
No. And then
Right.
they released like I think they called it the Seasides, which is like the hardcore version of the mountain. So,
Oh, geez.
yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I definitely mentioned that is going to win some serious points. Is that that soundtrack was really selling it for me.
Yeah. That soundtrack was in my head for a while.
Other than that,
can I take a minute? We've kind of touched on a few different things. I want to take a minute to just call out again. There's a lot to do in this game, and not once did I ever feel overwhelmed or that I had to do everything. I think when I first beat the game, I was at about 84% complete. Then I did a few things, and I'm at about 90. But I wanted to take a minute to call out just a lot of the other things you do in this game. Some of the things is just more of the art stuff. So designs. You design a T-shirt, which you wear. I designed a T-shirt that had a pizza slice on it, and I wore it the whole game. You design your family's donut holies. You have art pieces you create and recreate at an art school that get hung up around Picnic and in an art school in Elevensies. You can create custom brushes, an actual pizza logo for the slice pizza place in dinners. You create your own. I should figure out a way to grab this. Your own transit pass, which allows you to fast travel. You create a song. You create your color palettes. You create candy. Hats. It's just crazy stuff. So that's just design stuff. Go ahead, Justin.
The hat was the last thing, clothing wise, that I got. I knew the screen. Like the screen was, I was like, I don't know how to get to this spot. I can't figure it out. And then I finally did it. And then I got the 100% map complete achievement and the hat. So I was like, oh, thank God.
Perfect. So that's just designing. There's things like, as we mentioned, picking up trash around Picnic, getting gifts, which are typically clothing, shirts or head gear, hats or whatever, things like that. You have lost cats. You deliver mail as we the kids. The kids around town. You deliver mail, which there's a touching thing there with the kids. If you find all the kids, was it Pepper? I'm trying to remember. There was like a skunk, I think it was, that came down to the cat that was trying to find all the kids, and then you leave Beans, and then you give them a love letter, and then they become a couple, which is touching. You have things like retaking pictures for Gelato. So you go to locations of 5 different locations that he had been at when he was younger that were all colored in, but he's sad now because color left the world. So you go color in those screens and take a picture. You can decorate things. There's various people you decorate for, or you can just do it in something like your house. So there's things like you help somebody out with a garden, a beach, hotel room, the Wielder Tower. And then there's, was it one of the last things was investigate stolen hotel room furniture, which kind of leads into you also then decorating the room afterwards. So like there's a lot of things house here. Yep. And then and then you once you beat the game and there's not really a single wielder anymore, you have to find a place, which by the way, I figured it was only fitting that she become my neighbor, so she's on the same screen as me. So
100%.
So so it was just crazy how much other stuff there was here to do, which you could casually do and still feel good about it, or you could finish some of them and get little extra outfits and or kind of finish the little story threads that like we said with Radish, Gelato, or Beans, and I think it was Pepper. I'm trying to remember.
I think it's Pepper.
Was it Pepper? But anyway, so it was just, again, crazy amount of stuff to do on top of the coloring, on top of the great story. It's just overall just really cool.
Right. I mean, and what we were talking about, kind of just to reiterate, all I did was just kind of mainline the narrative and just played through the game pretty just start to finish. I didn't really do like hardly any of the side things, and that still netted me about 8 hours of game time. There's at least easily 20 to 30 hours worth of content in this game that you could just, either doing it before you finish the game or even after you finish the game. There's stuff to do once you've completed the game, and there's just tons of stuff in this world that you can interact with. All these different, like, there are an enormous number of NPCs in this game for being a $20 game is pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The value for this was great.
Yeah. So go ahead, Justin.
Oh, we talked on beans just for a moment, but I want to bring up a great story spot where they're like, I lost my 4 kids. I don't know what happened to them after the color went away. So you bring them back, the 4 kids, and then you continue on, and you're like, wait a second, there's another kid. You send more kids back to Beans, and she's like, I don't know where these kids came from, but someone's got to take care of them.
Yeah.
And did you get
the kids are just like little kittens and that are hiding in like various trees and plants around the world or something like that. So you go around and collect them.
Yeah.
Just,
some of the characters were characters.
Oh yeah, they were funny. That's what I was saying. Like, yeah, like Lemon. Like I was just, like that was like one of the first NPCs that I ran into was Lemon, and I was just like, this person's an asshole. And then they go and help me swim across like some water at the end of the game, and I'm like, all right, you're not an asshole no more. I'm sorry I painted your house like shit.
I like the just little goofy things too, like in the dinner's dinner's bench, there was coffee and omelet there arguing. Did you guys like like one was talking, I think about like it was basically one was like capitalism and one was like socialism, and they were arguing back and forth. And like,
they're like, well, I guess we'll never know which one is better. And they're like, yep, I guess not.
I did not run into that, but that's funny.
Yeah, and again, I guess since we're on characters, I want to give a shout out to my man Peppermint. Man, that bro was with you 110%. Anytime you did shit, he was around, and he did the cool little like, what is it? You'd walk up to him and you go, he's just wow, and then obviously it's all text based, not voice acted, but he was always like, basically, I love your stuff. Like, I'm your number one fan. He was, maybe I guess, maybe after a long time it could turn into one of those creepy groupies. But that my man Peppermint was everywhere. If I did something, he was there to support me and be like, man, you're awesome. I love your work. I hope I can be like you someday. Which also I found was kind of crazy because that's essentially how you, Pizza, were with Chicory. So it was just kind of cool to see that kind of happen there with Peppermint.
If Peppermint meets up with you in enough spots, they end up giving you a portrait of you. So the portrait that you hang in the Wielder's Tower, they go in there and they try to make their own copy and they give it to you, and you have to tell them if you think it's crap or if you like it, or you can just be like, So there's like, it's that continuing like growth and like you becoming the mentor now, like. It's so you can get Peppermint's picture of you.
I thought it was super cool. It was super cool. I liked Peppermint.
Just to troll a little bit, what was the name? I can't remember the name of the town. What's the name of the big city where the slice shop is?
Dinners.
Is that Dinners? Okay. So in Dinners, you would walk around and there's those alligators that are riding around on their bikes. You could actually like stop in the middle of the road and they just stop and just like stare at you, and you can get them like piling up.
Yeah. I forget there was something I was doing. I think I stopped like on a corner of the street. I think it was when I was painting the city hall for the gelato quest. And I just happened to stop where it blocked like all the lanes of traffic. Now I didn't stay there forever, but I think I had like a 6 or 7 alligator on their bike. I did like that you always like walk in front and there's that, like as they stopped,
and they ring the little bells too.
Ding, ding.
Yeah. Did any of you guys interact with Adult?
No.
Yes. Did you give your transit pass to him?
Yeah. So there's a quest in the city hall, where you can you talk to a person in a trench coat. They don't really have much of a face that you can see, but from the way they talk about themselves, it's definitely like a stack of kids in a trench coat.
Yeah.
And they ask for your transit pass, and you're like, And so for the longest time, I didn't give it to them, and then I was like, whatever, just take it. And they're like, "Oh, really? Sweet. I mean, yeah, that's something totally adults do," and then they just like run
Yeah.
out.
I love the conversations with them because yeah, it was those you'd meet them. I think I met them down in the swamp or something, and I don't even remember. I think it was just like you're just like, hey, what's up? And they're just like, oh, nothing, just doing adult things, out here and like the swamp, just adult stuff. It was never specific, but it was always something like adult this or adult that.
And then the transit person, if you walk back up to them, they're like, "Did you give your pass to them?" You're like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Whatever, take another picture." They just like totally don't care.
Yeah, this game's got a lot of personality in it.
Yeah.
That's why it's a very lovable game. Like, yeah, I mean, like, if you're looking for like a really hardcore challenge or something like that, like, yeah, like this ain't Elden Ring, like this ain't gonna like just shit on your day. But like, if you want something like really comfy and chill, like a chill game to play, I feel like this is just like this has got to be in your Steam library at some point, just as something
Now,
that you can just kind of chill and relax and play.
This is your.
I do have a question specifically for you, Justin, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is your Elden Ring chaser. It's to like de-stress after Elden Ring.
Yeah, just like, all right, you know what? I'm tired of dying to the same boss over and over. I'm gonna go paint some screens.
First off, I was actually recommending this to a coworker who has a daughter that's like 8 years old. It's like, like, hey, you should, play with it. It's a good game for kids, which kind of made me think, Justin, as someone who has kids, did you play this game cooperative at all with them at all?
I did not. No, I didn't get a chance to.
I didn't play this cooperatively.
I think a second brush. I think there's a second brush that's in there that you basically. I'd assume it's kind of like cooperative in the sense that they could be like, because there are some puzzles that are a little bit more like you gotta like recolor or rearrange or erase something, to time some different jumps. It could be something as much as helping that, or just having two people coloring a screen together, or I guess a painting and things like that. So I did pull up a video real quick of two people that there was like a player 1 and a player 2 brush floating around on the screen. So that's about as much as I know about co-op. But I was curious, was someone with kids, if this to me seems like something like you'd play with one of the kids, and it'd be fun to, again, kids like coloring. I mean, adults do too, right, Justin?
For sure. Yeah, no, I my kids are to the age where they can't quite read to themselves yet, so all of this text I'd have to read to them.
Oh.
Or they can. My son can read, but he can't read fast enough to as stuff is flying by. So, and then I get the questions about like, what are they talking about? And I'm like, oh shit,
Dad, can you explain socialism and capitalism to me? And the pros and cons of each? I'm really curious what omelet and what's his face would talk.
Coffee.
Yeah, coffee and omelet we're talking about. I have hard to remember everybody's names. There's so many people.
I know. Well, just pick a food. That's why I said don't play this game when you're hungry, because this is insane. Yeah, everything is food related.
Did you guys get your haircut?
No,
I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got my haircut, and I think it was the same. Like you get it cut by answering different questions. And I'm pretty sure that my haircut was the same as what I went and started with. And I was just like, whatever.
Yeah. No, I switched it up, and I thought it was pretty cool. It was a little different than the first haircut. Yeah. Okay. What I did do, it's not a terrible, it wasn't something that really mattered, but I also locked the colors on pretty much myself.
Yeah.
Because you can color the characters. You can color everything in this game if we haven't driven that point home yet. So like your character. So I kind of got tired a few times where it was like, I'd be coloring a screen and all of a sudden like I'm all blue. And I'm like, so once I got some good colors, I think it was red. I painted myself to look a little bit more like, I'm assuming it's like a dog or something is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I did like a brown, and then I had a little headband, made that red. And then I had a black t-shirt, or my pizza t-shirt on. So yeah.
At what point did you color your parents? Oh, you guys said you never talked to Dad, so you would have been at home. But
you talk to Mom, and you can meet Mom and Dad in what was it? Oh God, too many names here. Potluck.
Potluck.
right? Yeah, potluck is where your mom and your family lives.
So
I probably colored them on accident.
I think that's where I colored them.
Okay.
It was
I
in potluck.
randomly started coloring mom while on the phone with her. So like during this little like cutscene thing, like it let me start coloring the characters, and then like dad's hand came in to like, hey, give me the phone, right? And I was like, I don't want to talk to him, but I still just like colored his hand. And then when I finally got to potluck, he was like half colored.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right.
Other quick little musings. So sorry, Rich.
Oh no, it's all right.
Did you guys mess with the music player at all?
There's a music player?
No.
So there's a character.
You get musical instruments and stuff. Is that what you're talking?
No, Kiwi. They look like
that one, yeah.
They're like a bard, like ostrich.
Yep.
So if you go and talk to them, you can draw circles around them, and depending on like how far away from them you are, and then where in the circle around them you are, it's a different tone and pitch. So you can make like songs. Yeah, my song was shit, but
mine was too. And it was
all of a sudden Kiwi would show up on one of my screens and start singing like as I'm running through through lunch, and I'm like, "Go away, Kiwi."
Yeah, I did the same thing. I was like, oh, okay, you just color and make music, and I just kind of scribbled around Kiwi, and I made a song. And then, yeah, like to your point, I'm just like running around collecting trash and gifts and talking to people, and he just sometimes the characters just kind of randomly show up places, and yeah, every time like I'd run to a screen and he was there, he was just like, I'm like, go away, stop, that's awful. Yeah, I made it, but I'm not good at it. Go away. Yeah, no, I forgot about Kiwi. I thought you were talking about the trash that you could get, or not trash, the stuff you could get from beans that was music, and you get like a keyboard, and or maybe that was one of the I don't know. There was a couple of shops that you could buy stuff from.
Yeah. So you can trade your trash in for different musical instruments. That's where
and
Kiwi
plants
lives,
and other things, decorations,
bug furniture.
Yeah. I love the bug section. That was so like creepy. My favorite was we didn't. At some point, you get summoned to Queen. Oh God, what was her name?
It starts with a D. I can't remember what her name is though.
Pretty sure I wrote her name down. Maybe I didn't.
It's like Dressera.
Dressera or something like that. And just kind of getting more help for kind of figuring out what's going on with the corruption. But I love the whole time you're down there before talking with her. Like the bugs are just gibberish.
Yeah, it's just their own language. Yeah.
And then you get, I think it was Prunus, I think it was his name.
I think so.
Like ends up being just a bug you can't see, gets in your ear and ends up being kind of like the universal translator in your ear for bugs speak. And then you go start talking to bugs and they're like, you're so ugly, like, or you scare me.
And it's like, I can understand you. And they're like, oh.
Yeah. And then there was a bug on the overworld, the upper, the
spider.
And going talking to them, they're all like, oh, I love living up here. You guys are weird looking, but I'm getting used to it. And I love your food up here. And at one point you deliver.
Much better.
Yeah, at one point one of your deliveries as part of the mail is some food from somebody, and it was
from the sweet shop.
Yeah.
I like how during one of the wielder trials, when you go up on top of the mountain, you have to play like that mini game of Osu, where you have to click the little bubbles as you're singing the song with Chicory. I was like, someone plays Osu. All right.
Yeah, that little rhythm game. I was not expecting that.
No, I wasn't expecting that either.
That was one of the things where I had wished I played it on the Switch, because it reminded me of an old DS game called Elite Beat Agents.
Yep. I love that game.
Yeah, it was super cool. I kind of wished like you could just play that section as like a mini game somewhere else in the game, but I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Has anybody else got anything that they want to chat about with Chicory? Do we want to give final verdicts on like or dislike?
I think I got
Should
through
we give?
everything I had noted here. So yeah, I'm good to
Do you want to
review
give
it.
this? Do you want to give it a score, Matt? Should we score it?
Sure. Why not?
All right, go for it.
One of these days we'll settle on a
We'll
score.
settle on one. I like the. I don't know what we're doing as far as like the campfire and the bonfire and all that. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I don't even remember our rating system. I just do whatever
Yeah,
you feel like you want to give it.
I don't even think I put it in the notes. Yep. Anyways, well, since we're creating our own scales, out of 8 slices that typically make up a full pizza pie, I would give this 8 slices. This was a fun game. It's a full pizza pie. Anyways, I had so much fun with this game. Again, it was kind of comparing again to last year's Undertale that we played. It was one of those like I didn't know what I was in for, right? And after everything was said and done, 14 hours or 16 hours later, I had a ton of fun. And I as I mentioned, I'm already recommending this to people, and it was just it was a fun journey. The mechanics were great. I never really got frustrated, and yeah, just overall a good time. It was a great pick, Justin. So
Thanks.
out of 8 slice score, I'd give it 8 slices, a full pizza pie. Thumbs up. Campfire Gaming, thumbs up. I don't know.
Rich, how many slices you giving it?
Oh man,
No, how many burritos?
So yeah, we're gonna go 8.5 out of 10 burritos, I think, on this one. I had a little bit of like nitpicks with some of like some of the mechanics and stuff like that. Like for example, I didn't. There's a couple of puzzles that you have to use, like where you have to move giant blocks with bugs underneath them. It was really annoying working with those because sometimes they wouldn't eat all of the paint and they would walk backwards, and I'm like, I'd get kind of pissed because I'd be like, all right, just go to the damn wall.
You gotta use the skinny brush. The skinny brush. That was the way to do it.
I kept getting screwed with. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that and the last boss fight where you're trying to just like sit and wait for Chicory to actually hit the boss. It was just like, dude, come on. Like the boss would blink in and out of like it would phase in and out, and then Chicory would like swipe at it, and then it had to hit it with the paint in order for it to grab the boss so that you could do damage to it. But like 9 times out of 10, Chicory would just flat out whiff the boss, and I'm like, okay, come on, just hit it. But besides that, yeah, I think the game was just it was a wonderful pick. I would highly recommend picking this up. Steam sale or no Steam sale, like this is definitely one that you're going to have to put into your library with some of the sheer dumpster fires that we've been given from like the AAA world. It is such a nice palate cleanser to just like get a nice $20 indie game that's got far more content than any AAA game that we've got in the last like 5 years. So definitely a great pick. Especially
no battle
for the
pass or
soundtrack.
season pass though, so maybe
No
I should
loot
take away a
boxes.
slice for
Yeah.
that.
Yep. All the cosmetics in this game are free.
Yeah.
All like 140 some of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. All right, what about you, Justin? What would you give it?
Yeah, unlike Matt, I prefer my pizza cut in squares. So I think I gave it a 9 out of 10. Same complaints as Rich, kind of like there was a little bit of inconsistency in the story with the paintbrush stuff. There was those bug blocks, dude. Like especially with me coming in there and when you go into the cave system and it's dark, I just painted everything. So then the bugs weren't even in the right spot to start. So I'm like trying to get them to me and then trying to get them to where like it was. Yeah, I spent way too much time on those. And there's a couple little things where I had issues glitching like between some of the thick lines you weren't supposed to, and I'd have to like jump around and stuff. So yeah, it's absolutely wonderful game. I've been suggesting it, like Matt said, to a handful of people already. 9 out of 10.
Solid. Yeah. So, dear listener, if you are listening to this and you're still with us, we definitely recommend that you go pick up Chicory if you haven't already. Even though we just spoiled the entire game for you with a lot of depth into some of the side stuff, you should still play it anyway. Even if it is spoiled, play it anyway. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Yep.
So, with that, gentlemen, I'd like to
know if you
Go
break the
ahead.
brush.
Yeah. Tell us what happens.
What happens?
Yes. Visit campfiregamingpodcast.com, go to our Discord, and tell us what happens when you break the brush. Or you could tweet at us at CampGamePod and also let us know what happens when you break the brush. Just as a reminder, next month's book club will be Alice. I don't remember the full title. What was
Madness Returns.
Madness Returns. Yes, Alice Madness Returns. So that'll be our book club for May. But stop in, suggest a book club to us. We'd love to hear from you. If you're coming from the YouTube space, be sure to hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. We would love to get your feedback or some insight. If we missed something and you think we shouldn't have, yell at us. We'd love, regardless if it's good feedback or bad feedback, we want to hear it. All right. So thank you both very much for joining me. Justin, thank you especially for guesting on our podcast today. It's always fun having you on board.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for picking Chicory. It was a blast to play.
And with that, we'll see you guys next time around the campfire.